So here we are, this is Albion Yard YouTube channel, and this is Shelfie4 Maple River, an HO scale model which I've been producing, and it will be a shunting or switching layout set in Northern Ontario. The concept is a very simple layout. What I wanted to do was to make something relatively quickly. So the chassis is straightforward 2x1 softwood. It is roughly 6 foot long and approximately 1 foot in depth. The back seam is a single piece of plastic sheeting, which is the sort of stuff used for commercial signage. The construct of the layout is there's 2x1 framing, the back panel there, and the track is on panels of MDF. I learnt this very early on with Albion Yard, and it follows sort of practice, but follows the practice that Ian Rice has recommended. I've now done 4 layouts like this with this wooden subframe, if you like, or chassis with the MDF track panels, and I've not had any problems with it at all. So there's a lot of talk about MDF being a poor track panel or poor material for model railroads, model railways, and in my experience it isn't. You just need to use it carefully and make sure obviously that you don't get loads of water into it, because that is where you do get problems. So Maple River then is a grain terminal, and you can see here the tracks which are truncated at the end of the board. Now at this point here is where the main trains will come in, and this is just a siding. So I'm going to need to cut that area out, which will be interesting because what I want to do is to try and make that as invisible as possible, that hole. So I'll be doing a lot of building masking. This right hand corner here is likely to have some form of building in its silos. The back of the layout, the idea is that this is entirely going to be a wall of silos, concrete, and a grain facility. So the locomotive that you can see in the 3 cars here are going to be on the loading unloading tracks. We've got a very simple loop at the front. The left hand end of the layout here is going to be more difficult to mask, because at this point here I can see that I've got a area where there's not going to be much in the way of view blocking, so I'm going to have to work out how to manage that join of the 3D and the 2D scenery, something that's always a bit of a challenge. The track is micro engineering code 70. The control system is again very simple. It's DCC, so you can see at the far left hand end here we've got this panel here, which is the NCE DCC control input. These here, bank of 5 switches, these are for the point controls. The points are Pico PL11 point motors. The frogs are not switched. I'm not seeing any problems at the moment with the locomotives. They're running across it nice and reliably. However, having just done the ballasting and the first stage of painting, that's always going to be an area that I'm going to have to revisit. So once the ballast has all dried, then I'm going to be getting back into it, testing it again before getting onto the full painting and final weathering. This micro-engineering track then was relatively easy to lay. It's gone down well. It's been fixed down with super glue rather than any other methodology. So an unusual technique, I think. Not many people use it. It's good fun and it does get the track down quick, but you have to be accurate with it. Once that was down, the next thing I did was use the Woodland Scenics ballasting system. I tend to work with systems because I like the fact that engineering, if you like, I like the fact that products are engineered to work together. So usually it gives you a good guarantee that the system will work. The Scenic cement here goes on well. It flows really nicely. It's some form of acrylic medium, a matte finish to it as well. So that's worked really nicely for me. The element that I didn't like, in fact, was the scenic sprayer here. It is designed to work with the system, and it does work. However, it puts on an enormous amount of the scenic cement, whereas what I found a far better methodology of using it was one of these traditional plant misters. They work exactly the same. It's water soluble, so if you clean it out, it's not a problem, but you get far better misting properties with this plant mister, and you actually save the amount of glue that you go on. So what I would suggest is, if you're using this system, perhaps not use the scenic sprayer that Woodland Scenics do, but actually invest in a couple of these really cheap plant misters, and they work really fine. So if you've been watching some of the other videos, you'll have seen that I've been working with AK acrylics for a water panel for this sort of quayside or riverside layout, hence the name Maple River. And this is the section. I'm now going to just drop it into the rough position that it's going to be going into. And it's given quite a good colouring. I'm really quite pleased with how that has worked. The overall look of it, the overall colour, and particularly the reflectivity of it is working really well. We're looking at natural light here. I'm just outside in an overcast day. However, under the layout lighting, it really does pop quite a bit more. So I've been really pleased with that. Next steps for this then are, again, refreshing the ballasting, just making sure that's good. Looking at the buildings are going to be probably standard kits from the Walthers range. They do a very good sort of grain silo, and a friend of mine, Rob, has given me some old silos that he hasn't used. Those are going to go in, and we're going to try and make this a very constrained view. I'm likely to have a pelmet that comes down to about here. So it's going to be a very, very constrained letterbox view, and in fact it might even be slightly less than that. And bear in mind, we're looking down slightly with the camera angle. The idea is to look in at around about a height of 54 inches or so, which I found really useful and works on a IKEA Kallax system, because I've got one of their Kallax shelving systems of a 4x4 box storage system. And if you go online, you can see those, and this sits really nicely on top of it. So for an apartment or small office or something like that, this size layout is going to really work, and it's got a lot of play value with it. I've already discovered that just looking at how the layout works and just playing with it and testing it. We've got a couple of sidings, a simple loop here where I can get probably at least 4 40-foot cars and sort of 3 60-footers, and 50 to 60-footers, and just get a good deal of play value out of it and operational value out of it. So that's the next steps, really. Get stuck into the ballast, take the water off again, because I'm not going to risk damaging that with all the amount of work that I've done with it. The water will be the last part that goes in. The control panel here, that is going to be modified. That's going to be much neater and possibly brought to either the middle of the layout or else as a handheld item which you can walk around the layout or up and down the layout and play with. The basic premise being that the storage and the fiddle yard is going to be at this right hand end, means that where I've got those switches at the moment isn't the most convenient, so it could just be putting them at the left hand end here to make it work better. So that's the basic introduction to Shelfie4 Maple River. Very simple shelf layout, compact, it's relatively light, I can handle it by myself without any problem, so it will work well for layouts, exhibitions, just throwing it in a car to take it to a show. And I hope some of you will see it at some stage in real life. Thank you very much for watching, and again, if you like the channel, please share, subscribe and like. Thanks for your time.